The Fan.
Be one of the first to see the first two episodes of the highly anticipated FX series Shogun on the big screen. You can head over to our contest page, register for your shot at a pair of reserved seats at an early screening February 22nd. KFAN.com, keyword contest.
Joining me now, it's Nordo in for PA. I'm at XL Energy Center in the Wild Radio Network radio booth. It's also the Bob Kurtz Radio Center here at the X. And joining me now remotely, because he's on his way to Winnipeg to check out Jetsland as the Wild are on a back-to-back 1 p.m. game here in Minnesota today, at Winnipeg tomorrow. Michael Russo of The Athletic, at Russo Hockey on Twitter. How you doing today, Mr. Russo?
I'm doing well. That's the benefit of having two writers cover the team for The Athletic. Joe can cover today. I can go tomorrow. We can not have to make tomorrow harder than it needs to be.
No, absolutely. And it's going to be hard enough for the Wild today, no doubt about it. Now, you hosted kind of bumper-to-bumper style Sunday sermons yesterday. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I had Billy on. I had Mike Yo, Johnny Athletic, Dylan Louds from Hockey News. Podcastable
with the free iHeartRadio app.
Yep, absolutely. And Brett Blakemore added his 2 cents, so it was fun.
Absolutely. And part of that, the reason I wanted to reference that right out of the gates is it's been a while since I've heard from Mike Yo, who is in town, now an assistant coach with Rick Tocchet and the visiting Canucks. How's Mike doing? How's he found his way with an incredibly the hottest of hot teams in the NHL right now?
Yeah, he's doing really well. I mean, obviously, best team in the league in the standings, and he's been there a couple years now. Obviously, Bruce Boudreau hired him originally in Vancouver. Then when Bruce left and Rick Tocchet took over, it was the perfect marriage because Tocchet and Yo worked together in Pittsburgh as well, and have known each other a long time. So I know that they get along well. The chemistry is really good, and obviously Mike has done a tremendous job with Toc there in Vancouver. They're just, I think, been the surprise of the league this year. Rick Tocchet's probably going to be up for the Jack Adams, Quinn Hughes for the Norris. Besser's got 30 goals. Demko maybe up for the Vezina, but Mike's doing well. I mean, he's made his way through the league a little bit since Minnesota, going to St. Louis and Philly. But he still lives here in Minnesota in the off seasons, and I honestly don't know if he'll ever leave here. He just loves it so much.
So with the Vancouver Canucks, and you hit it. I was talking with Fallness about it during the first hour, quote unquote, the surprise of the league this year in Vancouver, and that's where I'm kind of at as an outsider, Russo, where, coming into this, hosting the show today, checking out just who the Canucks are and everything that surrounds them. And I have to be honest, I'm thinking about a team a year ago where it was the weird dismissal and the hang around with Boudreau, to the idea, are players in that Canucks dressing room, are they on the market? Can Billy G bring Brock Besser back home? And now we're seeing what they're doing. I guess, to be honest, I'm kind of shocked with what I'm seeing from this team in 23-24.
Yeah, I think hand on the Bible, they are too. They were absolutely looking to move Brock Besser last year, and Ben Hankinson was actually, his agent was trying to help facilitate it, and Minnesota was definitely one of the teams interested, and I think Bill Guerin would have loved to make it work, but as we're seeing this year with just the absolute no cap space that they had, they just couldn't add Brock's salary cap. Now, that doesn't mean that Brock eventually, at some point, won't eventually get back to here and playing in Minnesota, but I know that Brock is extremely happy in Vancouver, and he's had one hell of a season, which is not good news for the Wild, because usually in Minnesota he performs really, really well in front of his mom and his family that's going to be at the game. So, you look at their roster, and their top six is excellent. Their blue line, which was supposed to be the real negative part of their team, has really, to me, been the surprise of the season. Obviously, Quinn Hughes, we know how good he is, but really a lot of those guys were fringe NHLers, and they added Zadorov and Tyler Myers, and there's not a lot there, and yet they're the third best offensive team in the league and the third best defensive team in the league. 5-on-5, they're outstanding. Their special teams has actually been pretty average, but when you get goaltending like Demko's been providing now that he's healthy and the way that they're playing up and down the lineup, they really look like they could be a team that could challenge, Vancouver, Colorado, Winnipeg at the end of the day.
You wrote, now the Wild are certainly in a different spot at this point. Not surprised of the league, maybe, unless people are surprised that they've had the struggles, the injuries, unpredictable as they are. They've really crippled this team at various parts throughout the season. But via The Athletic, kind of talking about the trade deadline coming up. And, with this schedule that the Wild are facing this week, the rest of the season in totality, you're going to see Arizona a couple of times, the Ducks in the mix. You're going to have some winnable games. But for this week in particular, when you're thinking about Vancouver into Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Seattle, and then Carolina in some respects next week, that's a grinder. So with the trade deadline just a couple of weeks away here, March 8th, I think, a Friday, how do you had Billy G on yesterday, kind of taking the temperature of things with limited flexibility, as you've reported on at The Athletic multiple times throughout this season, the urgency to fight for that playoff spot versus better positioning maybe this summer and into next season. This is a balancing act from hell for Billy G.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the biggest. Like I talked to Burr about this the other day. Like I think a lot of times we're making too much of it. It would be an interesting trade deadline if Foligno and Zuccarello and Hartman were on the market. But right now, because they extended them at the beginning of the year, there's just not a lot there to even sell, right? I mean, obviously you got Marc-Andre Fleury, and he's going to, Bill Guerin said it directly to me yesterday. Marc-Andre Fleury will call his shot at the trade deadline on what he wants to do. Does he want to stay? Does he want to go? If he wants to go, he's going to probably get a chance to go. Pat Maroon is available, but he's hurt right now and probably won't be back till mid to late March. So that certainly affects his trade value. They just added Mason Shaw. Theoretically, they can move him. And then the other guy, obviously, is Brandon Duhaime, who I think actually if they put on the trading block, that he'd be a pretty hot commodity and they could get something of substance asset-wise for him. And then you got Bogosian, who he'd like to bring back, on an extension, whether that's before the trade deadline or after. So there's just not a lot there. And so we'll see what they do in this. This week is going to tell a lot. Obviously, a hellacious week that they have ahead here with the best team in the league in the standings here tonight. Then you go to Winnipeg tomorrow night. You have a couple of days off, and then you go to Edmonton, who has been an absolutely different team than the last time that the Wild faced the Oilers. So, there's been obviously a coaching change, and the Wild have usually played them pretty well, but they look like a different team and have been getting really quality goaltending from Skinner and tremendous play from guys like McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman and Evander Kane and those guys. So we'll see what they do at the deadline, but right now I'm still not, to me, the intrigue passed the second that those extensions were made last training camp.
That's Michael Russo, The Athletic, at Russo Hockey via Twitter/X. A couple more for you. It's funny, I have a hard time keeping up with this where you go on that 4-game streak and you really, some difficulties on Saturday keep you just a hair from winning 5 in a row. And I'm getting the text messages, sell off the whole damn thing. Whole thing sucks. It's awful. Can't believe it. But, just before puck drop on Saturday against the Sabres, it's what are they going to do at the trade deadline? Can they add? The roller coaster as this team has slowly started to hop, skip, and jump their way over people, 4 points out of a playoff spot. The sentiment around this team is very unstable at this moment, Mr. Russo.
Yeah, I mean, that's been their season, right? They've been just a disjointed year. They just haven't performed very well. Obviously, the injuries came at the worst time there in, late December and early January, and it put them in a real tough position. But for the most part, they've played really well under John Hines. They have points in 8 of the last 10, 5 in a row. But yeah, the game the other night is disappointing, especially if you put in the context that St. Louis wound up getting thumped that night by the Predators. And so the Wild are essentially, and this is why to me, it's still a long shot that they're going to make the playoffs, is they are fighting for one playoff spot right now, and they're jam-packed with a bunch of teams there. And the Blues seemingly keep on winning. LA Kings look like they were about to fall off the earth a couple weeks ago, and now they're winning every single night, and with the exception of one game against Buffalo. So they've sort of righted the ship there, and it's put the Wild in a position, especially since we know the Oilers are going to make the playoffs. So you're essentially fighting for the 8th spot and looking at maybe Vancouver in the first round of the playoffs, or Dallas in the first round of the playoffs. So, not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. So we'll see where they go right now. But they've been playing much, much better hockey lately, and we'll see. They just went into Vegas and won big there, so this week isn't totally daunting. We have seen the Wild play really well here and find their game since the All-Star break, and we'll see if they could figure out a way to really take the disappointment that they had, obviously, the other night, Eric, and put that behind them. Because that, to me, is the most important thing, is that they still got a point out of that game. They played well for the most part in that game, and they right now can't afford any letdowns. And as disappointing as they all were to blow that game the other night, and what could have been a storybook night for Declan Chisholm, and then to lose in overtime the way that they did, they've just got to flush it down the toilet and prepare for a very tough Vancouver team today, and obviously a Winnipeg team that has had their number lately tomorrow.
To open the show, had head coach John Hines on, and he mentioned that he was not going to change the lineup into today's matinee game. Mason Shaw, you had reported over the weekend, saw him at practice, and he was out there on the ice doing his thing. If you're someone not named Mason Shaw, which players do you think are paying attention to Mason if he's not in the lineup today? Maybe he's in the lineup tomorrow, that might find themselves not playing because Mason's back.
Well, I mean, obviously, it'll be a simple thing if they want to just take Jake Lucchini out of the lineup, which most likely is probably what would happen. But Freddie Gaudreau is the one that clearly should have his radar up right now. He just has been just a colossal disappointment this season. And I don't know if it has to do with the broken ribs that he suffered in Game 2 of the season in Toronto, and Ryan Reeves hit him at center ice there in the first period, and Foligno fought Reeves after as a sort of a response to it. But for whatever reason, Freddie Gaudreau has just, disappeared this season after a great year last year that earned him a 5-year contract extension, in large part because they weren't convinced that Marco Rossi was going to be a player. I think if Bill Guerin could have looked in the future and known that Rossi would perform as well as he has this season, I don't think he would have signed Gaudreau to that contract, or at least not that term. But Freddie had a great year, perfect timing to have it during a contract year, gets the 5-year extension, and he's just got to be better, and just hasn't found any traction this season on any line, hasn't produced, defensively hasn't been as good, hasn't checked as well, hasn't been a special teams guy. They haven't gotten to shootouts, so he hasn't been able to really prove his value there, which we all know that he has incredible value in the shootout. So he's one guy that down the stretch here has to get much, much better. And I got to think that if there's a performance issue that requires Mason Shaw to get into the lineup, like, to me, there just comes a point you got to send Freddie a message. We all know he cares. We all know he's a great guy. We all know that he's a good player. But at some point you gotta pay the price for performance, and I think he's the one guy that would probably have to come out of the lineup. The other guy, obviously, that a lot of Wild fans are talking about is Hartman. Hartman just hasn't been as good lately, but again, I just don't see. I think Freddie is probably first dibs to be taken out.
Hey, thank you so much for your time as always, and safe travels to Winnipeg, and we'll catch up again soon.
Yep, see you, buddy.
That's Michael Russo of The Athletic, at Russo Hockey via Twitter/X. And Russo's appearances on a weekly basis, 9 to noon, are always brought to you by OVO LASIK and Lens. Go to ovoi.com, OVOEYE.com. OVO LASIK and Lens brings you Russo 9 to noon. And we're going to stay with the hockey bent. The theme on a President's Day 9 to noon today, we're going to jump down to the college ranks. Pat Micheletti joining me next. Gophers hockey, Motzko's team. They split with Notre Dame over the weekend. Just another couple of games left. I think it's a week off, and then they host Michigan. And then we see how they work in the Big Ten tournament and beyond. But we'll talk about some college hockey, a couple of wild bits with Pat Mick 2626 around the corner. It's Nordo in for PA on a Monday. Brett Blakemore producing. I'm live at the XL Energy Center in the Bob Kurtz Radio Center. You can listen to The Fan.
Join Muss and the Light tomorrow night at Park Place Sports Bar in St. Paul Park from 5 to 7 p.m. Stop by and register for your chance to win a spot in the Vikings Foundation Golf Tournament, plus stock up on Miller Lite swag. Head over to KFAN.com, keyword golf, for more info.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. Nordo in for PA. He'll be back tomorrow. Kind of a funky week ahead of us here. PA out today. He's in tomorrow. He'll be out Wednesday, and then he's back on Thursday. He's out of town doing some traveling. And joining me now, I'm at XL Energy Center. I'm kind of out of the studio as well. Thanks to Kevin Fallness for letting me hang out with him as he did earlier today, and he unlocked the door for me, let me in. Everything's gone well, except this printer keeps going off next to me and is incredibly obnoxious. But joining me now, remote location, is Pat Micheletti at PatMick2626. And in front of a Wild game today, just kind of taking a left turn into the college ranks to chat about Motzko's team and some hockey-related bits. How you doing, Mr. Micheletti?
Good. It's always great to talk to you. I wish I could have joined you today, but I unfortunately couldn't get down there. But you know what? I hear your voice, so that's all that matters.
Grandfather-related duties, is that accurate?
Yes. That is absolutely correct.
Well, there's no place you'd rather be then.
And
that's as good as it gets.
Yeah, it's the best.
You get to play, you get to love, and then you get to give them back. And it's all part of a positive day at the Micheletti household. Going back to the weekend, Pat, and
yes.
The Gophers bounce back. They split in that series with Notre Dame in South Bend. What happened with the Friday night bloodbath, though?
Well, it happens. It's happened to pretty much every team that's ever existed. I was thinking back, how would I explain it? And so you have to go back and maybe use some of your experiences as a player. And I went back to my senior year at the university, and I remember we played Wisconsin in Wisconsin, and the series ended up as a split. But on one of the nights, I think it was Saturday night, if my memory serves me correct, we got completely run out of Dane County Coliseum, lost, 7-1. We got a late goal, something like that. And the point is, if you know that you're a good team and you have belief in yourself and your teammates do and all of that, you understand that nights like that are going to happen. Our team eventually went on to the Final Four that year. And so you can't really get too concerned about it if you know what you have for a team and the players know, and it's kind of a one-off. And they bounced back, obviously, the next night with the overtime win.
Is Motzko's team is safely in the tournament at this stage, just kind of jockeying for position right now? Big Ten tournament might have something to say about that, but in terms of postseason play, getting into the dance, Motzko's team's safely in the mix, correct?
Yeah, they hover back and forth between 8 and 9 in the pairwise, and so I would venture to guess that they're safe and will be in. The top 16, as you know, get in. However, each conference champion gets an automatic bid. So this year, for example, the CCHA only has one team that can get in the tournament. Everybody else pairwise is too far out to get back and get in an at-large bid. And so that will take one spot. The Atlantic League, that will take one spot. They'll only have one representative from their league. So really, you got to be in the top 14 to be safe. And so Minnesota's in pretty good shape.
It's funny you mentioned the CCHA. So I think you guys beyond the pond were talking. Did you have Siski on Saturday?
We did.
Yeah,
we
that's
did.
right. I love Bruce, and Bruce's voice is just, it hits me, and no matter where I am, I was almost positive that was Siski. But you guys were talking a bit about Arizona State, and I guess,
yeah.
and just, this is a team, I think they have 20 wins on the season, but, back in the pairwise, maybe just because of quality of competition and some other things. But I got a text while you were just talking about the CCHA, the fact that Bemidji State, the Beavers, that they lead the conference, but they're 40th in the pairwise. And so, it's I don't know how if this is an annual thing, semi-annual thing where, if your team's on the outside looking in, you have maybe a biased prism or perception of what the pairwise is either helping or hurting in terms of your team's chances. But Beavers fans everywhere are wondering what the heck's going on. So they just gotta win the CCHA and they're in.
Tournament championship. And so, because that's your automatic bid. And, I'm not going to pretend I know everything about the pairwise, but it goes by strength of schedule, and where that team you're playing is currently at. So if you're playing, for example, teams that are in the 20s, or in the 30s as far as their pairwise ranking, you're not going to move up. In fact, you have a chance of moving down. If you will move down if you lose a game. So it's kind of, everyone seems to think it's a fair and accurate way of determining whether you get in the tournament or not. I'm looking at St. Cloud right now, right? They are second in the NCHC, and right now they're in, I think, at number 15. I haven't checked today's pairwise rankings, but there's a case in point. They're playing in a great league. They're playing well. They're second overall, and there's a chance that they have to win their tournament to get into the NCAA. So some of the things confuse me sometimes, Nordo. I just kind of sit back and say, okay, who are the final 16 that are in? Let's go from there.
I like that. That's Pat Micheletti at PatMick2626. A couple more for you on the college side of things. How have my Mavericks settled in without Hastings? They're kind of out of it this year, aren't they?
No, they're right in the thick of things.
Okay.
And Luke Strand has done a terrific job. I remember back when Hasty left, and it was like, oh, the Mavericks are done, and I kept telling people, hang on, just wait. They're going to get a good coach. I guarantee this is a place where athletes want to go and play. And secondly, coaches want to come and coach. And it took some time, but they eventually got a really good coach in Luke Strand. They lost a lot of guys, and everyone thought it was going to be a rebuild. And to a certain extent, it has been. But they are, they have as good a chance as anybody in that league to make the NCAAs again. And I think they're in a point out of first place. So they're fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine in the city that has the happy chef. That's all I can say.
I'm
a big happy chef guy.
Oh, the happy chef.
You don't go to the happy chef, do you?
You push the button. I haven't been down to Mankato in quite a while. I need to go back down for no other reason.
Yeah, and you're one of the naysayers. You don't go back. I'm disappointed.
No, I need to reconnect with my local roots. I absolutely do. And now if Horns are back up, then I'm in, and I'll acknowledge my hometown again. Absolutely. Now to the pro team as we wrap up this segment, Mr. Micheletti. Tough loss on Saturday. Hottest team in the business in town today. Kind of a grueling stretch over the next week. Chance to get points today for the home squad, Mr. Micheletti?
I think the way you have to look at things, because they've been playing well since the break, right? And and they're getting points. I'm talking about our team here.
Oh yeah,
and you win 4 in a row, and then you lose a tough overtime game. They're 4 points out of a playoff spot, have to climb a couple teams. I think if I'm the Minnesota Wild, I don't look at the standings. I don't really care about what other teams are doing. The focus has got to be to win, get points every night. And yes, they would have loved to have gotten 2 the other night, but they didn't. Today is going. Today's they're playing one of the best teams in the Western Conference. This is a team in Vancouver who has a chance to win the Western Conference and a chance to win the Stanley Cup. And so it's going to be a tough game. But for Minnesota, they know every game. Every game is a playoff game. Every game is a Game 7 for them because they need points and they're not into it. So it appears they have a good attitude about the way they're playing and all of that. So we'll have to see. It's going to be obviously it's going to be challenging today, but sometimes teams like that challenge.
Thanks as always, Pat. You get back to grandfather duty, and we will talk again soon.
You're the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat Micheletti, Beyond the Pond, Beyond the Pod. You hear him all over the place. Minnesota Wild fan line. Apparently he does it from his house now, much to the chagrin of a certain fan line host. But it's at Pat Mick 2626 via Twitter/X. News around the corner. And then Bally Sports North's Kevin Gorg will join me here in the Bob Kurtz Radio Center at 11 a.m. It's Nordo in for PA at the X. Game day, Wild and Canucks. Puck drops shortly after 1 p.m.
KFAN, The Fan.
Welcome back, 9 to noon, Nordo in for PA. We're at the X today, so very hockey-heavy broadcast. It's the non-Vox out of the box, as I am here at the Bob Kurtz Radio Center, fresh new digs, the studio that Kevin Fallness and the Wild Radio Network operate with. I mean, it's space age. I'm at NASA right now. It's truly a spectacle to behold. And the only problem is Fallness won't give me the Wi-Fi password. So that's mildly frustrating. But that's a different topic for a different time. News du Nord is brought to you by The Casino, not just a casino, The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Poker, blackjack, table games all year round. Bingo on Tuesdays. And then we all patiently await the 2024 live racing schedule to be announced and to commence. So CanterburyPark.com is the spot to go for all of that. And Brett Blakemore, where are we going to from a News du Nord perspective?
Number 1.
Well, I'm going to start things with a leftover from
Vikes Bites.
your Marcus Davenport. Have you heard of him? His contract goes void today. What was your favorite Marcus Davenport moment?
I believe it was in the... Gosh, that's a great question. He only played in a few games. The injury situation into camp, out of camp, into the games. He's there, then he's not. He had a game this year, and I'm feverishly thinking in my head, and I'm pretty sure it was the Carolina game. He was an unstoppable force. And that's just part of, not creating not a ton of optimism in some ways. If you're thinking about in this offseason, all of the things that the general manager in this organization have to contend with, have to juggle in the air at the same time, contractually and financially. And you just think about going back to 2023, you're in two camps. People are in two camps. We needed to tank, okay, which is mostly unrealistic. And then we were so close to making the playoffs. So those are kind of the two camps. And if you're the camp that was so close to making the playoffs, you think about Marcus Davenport and the total of 4 games that he was actually active for, and just a massive miss, an absolute stone cold bust. And in the end, what it came down to is we really necessarily can't be surprised that things went the way they did. The conversation talker, if you're thinking about Marcus Davenport, former first-round pick, I don't know if the Saints moved up to get him, but he was top 15, I know that, in the 2018 draft, save for a singular season in which he had 8 or 9 sacks. Marcus Davenport has had trouble staying on the field, being productive in the games in which he's on the field, and all of that came to play in 2023 with the Minnesota Vikings. So you pay him that fat cash. It was $7 or $8 million with a chance to make, I think, up to 12 or 13, and how all of that worked out. And in a season where Daniil was absolutely lights out, and DJ Wanham, in a contract year, played more than up to snuff, and you get 7-8 sacks out of him, and you're starting to feel good about what that might look like long term. And the ability to have Marcus Davenport part of that was so vital to this defense. Now we're on the props train again for Brian Flores, and with so little he had to work with, he found ways to make it work, and at times it was very high end. But that 3-game stretch, and it was starting at Carolina, he was an absolute earth-moving menace in that Carolina game. Then he even starts the next week against Kansas City. Gets sacks in both of those games, couple of TFLs. He's putting hits on the QB. He's playing half the snaps. And all of that is positive. And then he just disappears again, never to be seen. And the ability, if you would have been able to have a Marcus Davenport active and productive when DJ Wanham goes down with the torn quad, that potentially is a game changer. So it was nothing short of a disastrous disappointment, and the team could not move on from Marcus Davenport fast enough. So my favorite moment would be, hey, I can see him on the field in Carolina, and he was a game changer in that game. And then just a couple of weeks later, I think it was Carolina, Kansas City, and the Bears. Didn't play in the Niners game and was done for the year. So best of luck to him in future endeavors, is what some have said, and some have received an email form. That's what the Vikings, I'm sure, have sent to Mr. Davenport.
Number 2.
The NBA All-Star game is over. The East beat the West 211 to 186. That's a score. Cat led the way, at least for the West, dropping 50 points. Are you in the camp that, man, this sucks that there's no defense and everyone's mailing it in? Or do you think this is what the All-Star games are? Let's just move on.
I was kind of surprised. I got this text message, 64686. Listener says, the Davenport injury interview, where he laughs about his injury and not playing, is my favorite Marcus Davenport moment. So there you go, 64686. Tell us what your favorite Davenport moment or non-moment was in the 2023 season. To the NBA All-Star game, Brett, did you watch it last night?
I did not, no.
Just not an NBA fan? It's all hockey, it's all Premier League, English soccer,
yeah,
or
I
it's
plead
nothing?
the fifth. Correct.
And then Packers football.
Yes.
Okay. We talked about it because Chris Finch, head coach of the West All-Stars for the game, Mike Malone was the coach last year and was quoted as saying something around the lines of, it was the worst game of basketball that he had seen in his life last year. And so I'm thinking about Mike Malone, head coach of the Denver Nuggets, eventually NBA champions last year. If he's sitting on his couch last night and he's watching this game, is he's like, well, I thought last year was bad. It's brutal. It's not a real game. But I was surprised. People, or maybe I shouldn't be surprised. The recency of things, we have a phone at our fingertips, we have X accounts and Instagram, etc., and we almost put on every subject, every moment, we have to put our opinion out there. And it felt like people covering the game, people around the game, were somehow shocked that this game was as awful as it was, that players aren't taking it seriously. I saw Scott Van Pelt, ESPN, and this isn't an indictment of Scott. SVP does a great job. But he's like, if the players don't care, we don't care. Something along those lines. It's like, when did they care? Now, the game used to be different. There used to be some defense involved in the festivities. But in the end, this is the exact same conversation that we would have about an NHL All-Star game. And where, from the skills standpoint, It's cool to see guys on the ice from different teams, best stars in the league. That's super cool when you're 10. Mid-90s Nordo. I'm watching the NFL skills competition in Honolulu, and it's Brett Favre, and it's Dan Marino towards the end of his career. These guys trying to see who can throw the ball the longest. That was cool to 10-year-old Nordo. These were as a young sports fan, before the bitterness of Minnesota sports-loving negativity really just absolutely turned my heart black on this whole thing. The love of seeing these mythical, godlike athletes all together in one spot was the coolest thing ever. Now, as an adult, that, as I mentioned, that's changed. It was a little melodramatic there. But now, the NBA, when has the NBA been different? And so kind of the shock around it, hey, can't believe that they scored 211 points. I have a TV on in front of me now on a national network, and they're having a talker. Can somebody score 100 points in today's NBA? Like that's it. And so they're building on a tough Monday on a President's Day with nothing going on right now. I don't know what NFL insiders are doing. They are, and other than being here talking about a hockey game coming on at 1 p.m., we're when we have, Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson and Daniil Hunter talkers that just won't die. We're all scrambling for talkers. But that game is not going to change. It's not going to improve. It is always going to be more offense. Now, will there be 211 points scored next year? Maybe not. But it is going to be a bleep around. It is going to be, after this All-Star break, Thursday night, Damian Lillard, he's hoisting the MVP trophy. And I was laughing. I saw this on social media. I assume that most of you that listen to 9 to Noon in the audience, you're not avid fantasy hoops players. But Damian Lillard, with the way things have been going with the Bucks this year, he scores 39 in the All-Star game. You're going to be sweating his shooting percentage and how many turnovers he has on Thursday night and how quickly it's going to change. Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, and so we'll look at those local angles, but this is not new. There's no purpose to the game. And I saw it being floated around, hey, how about this? Let's do the winner of the game gets home court advantage in the NBA Finals. But I think people would balk at that too. Some of the All-Star, they have no chance of getting to the NBA Finals. And in some ways, will they start playing lockdown defense? Will they not be exclusively shooting with their offhand? Will they not be throwing alley-oops to themselves or off the backboard shots to themselves because of that being on the line? How serious are you going to take it if you're Joker or somebody and, Mike Malone's your guy? Now Chris Finch is here trying to set up or design a play in the fourth quarter of an All-Star game. I think it's up to the league to decide whether they can make money off of it over the course of an All-Star weekend. The festivities that go on, the skills contest, three-point shooting, and all of that. Can they make money off of it? Will people watch it? That's another key. Everyone's complaining about it, and what were they doing? They were watching it. I watched a fair amount of it. And yes, it was terrible, absolutely. But it's not shocking. It's not surprising. There's nothing on the line. They don't want to get hurt. They're messing around with their boys, having a blast. And the key for me, ultimately, again, is the people that are 10 years old now, the way that I loved NFL Pro Bowl festivities in the mid-'90s, the kids are loving this. The kids are seeing Cat on the court. Kids are seeing Damian Lillard, and they're seeing all of this front stage altogether. I think as long as the kids love it, as long as we bitter adults continue to complain about it on social media while still watching it, as long as there's nothing on the line, then I think that, it's not going to change. So if anything, I feel like I've spent too much time talking about it because I wasn't surprised by it. It was an exhibition. It was a bleep around, and they did that. There was a lot of bleeping around. So I'm not offended by the game or anything like that. And it was super cool. Again, now getting back to the local side of it, Brett, is Chris Finch, getting to see him enjoy the fruits of the accolades, the fruits of his labor with this team, tops in the West. Seeing Karl Anthony Towns, and of course, I think he definitely had the most shots last night. It was 34 or 35 shots he took. and dismal from beyond the arc, but he went out there, scored like 30 points in the fourth quarter. That was kind of cool to see our guys out there doing that sort of thing. So it's an awful game. It means absolutely nothing. But I would also say this is from a Wolves standpoint, seeing your coach in the mix, seeing one of your guys and Carl out there. Ant didn't really do much, but seeing those guys out there, that is kind of cool. So locally, I think if you can pull a couple of morsels out of it and then just take a deep breath, you know the game is pointless. Just either enjoy it or turn the channel. Hey, final episode of True Detective was on last night. You should have watched that instead.
Number 3.
Time for one more here. Are you familiar with a guy named Fabrizio Romano?
Fabrizio Romano. No, I'm not.
He's essentially the Adam Schefter, the Woj bomb of the European football world. And he'll tweet all Premier League and European stuff. But he tweeted today, breaking news about your local MLS club, the Loons, Minnesota United. They have approached, finally, even though the first game of the season is Saturday, they've finally approached someone to be their new manager. Manchester United assistant coach Eric Ramsey is his name. Talks are ongoing, progressing well. He would be the youngest head coach in MLS history. He's 31. He's as old as Max almost. He's a year older than Max, like 4 years older than me, and he's due to be your new Loons coach. I guess better late than never, but the season starts in a couple days, so rip away on that.
Well, and I assume the collective sigh of finally coming out of St. Paul basically just deflated that picturesque venue at Allianz Field, because when was Adrian Heath dismissed? Maybe December prior to that?
Yeah, mid-season,
maybe?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, even earlier back. So you go interim style, and then you get into the offseason, and we're having visa. We can't get people and players and coaches like into the freaking country to deal with stuff. They've been on this grind of a search. I think they may have either promoted, like there was maybe some new CEO-related transitioning that was taking place too. So they have, just an absolutely frenetically paced and frustrating winter. And for them to get this deal done is sweet. And you're right, not soon enough. Saturday, I think they're on the road in Austin. Their home opener is Saturday the 2nd with Columbus in town. So they needed to get this done. I know nothing about this Manchester assistant. So I'm just going to leave you with that and say, cool. And scarves up. There's no doubt about that. As we wrap up, News du Nord brought to you by The Casino, Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Kevin Gorg of Bally's Sports North joins me next right here on The Fan.